All right, so
Go
Heart
ahead.
Sutra, very short. Um, I chose it because I wasn't sure how this was going to go.
Just out of curiosity, before we're fully getting started, was there a particular reason that you chose the order of the sutras that you did? Is it like in order from at least supposedly when they were published, or is it like by topic? I'm just curious.
I just chose Heart Sutra because it's the shortest one.
That's
It's
usually why
literally-
it's picked first.
Yeah, it's literally 2 pages. I mean, I think we might dig into some of the concepts. So I might read from the concepts here a little bit, depending on what you guys want to do. But yeah, Heart Sutra is easiest because it's the shortest. And then Diamond Sutra is like the second shortest, which is why it's the next one in line. And then there's much longer ones, which I haven't figured out quite yet how I would want to handle them. But why don't I read Heart Sutra real quick, and then we can choose to discuss. And then there's like Red Pine, he like goes over some of the concepts, because he translated, so he like has full on like chapters for like words and stuff. So okay, the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, while practicing the deep practice of Prajnaparamita, looked upon the 5 skandhas, and seeing they were empty of self-existence, said, "Hear, Shariputra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not separate from form. Form is not separate from emptiness. Whatever is form is emptiness. Whatever is emptiness is form. The same holds for sensation and perception, memory and consciousness. Here, Shariputra, all dharmas are defined by emptiness, not birth or destruction, purity or defilement, completeness or deficiency. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no sensation, no perception, no memory, and no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, and no mind, no shape, no sound, no smell, no taste, no feeling, and no thought, no element of perception, from eye to conceptual consciousness, no causal link, from ignorance to old age and death, and no end of causal link from ignorance to old age and death, no suffering, no source, no relief, no path, no knowledge, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, without attainment, bodhisattvas take refuge in Prajnaparamita and live without walls of the mind. Without walls of the mind, and with they see through delusions and finally nirvana. All Buddhas, past, present, and future, also take refuge in Prajnaparamita and realize unexcelled, perfect enlightenment. You should therefore know the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great magic, the unexcelled mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, which heals all suffering and is true, not false. The mantra in Prajnaparamita spoken thus: Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhi Svaha. And that's it. That's the Heart Sutra. All right, we're done. Peace out. See you guys. Thanks for joining. That's it. All right.
Whoa. You don't think there's anything more to talk about here?
That's it. We're done. We don't have anything to talk about. We're done.
Well, but there seemed to be a lot of good stuff to dissect in there. You don't have anything written down or anything?
There's much to get into. Well, I think that there are. I mean, the central concept is emptiness. So I guess I would want to open up first for everybody, and we can talk about emptiness. What is emptiness?
I could take a crack at one perspective of it, and I think it's natural for human beings to prescribe like essences, especially to people, but even to like objects, certain emotions or concepts to them. And if you really experience it correctly through meditation or through even just conceptually looking at the concepts, those can be empty. Those they aren't really real in a true sense. So I don't really know how to say it in words, but that's sort of my thought. Like the actual essences are just something you are creating. they aren't truly real. But that's just a portion of it, I'm sure.
So I'm reading the Heart Sutra, and it starts off by saying, and seeing they were empty of self existence. So, not empty of like physical substance, but they're empty of a self and a self that exists enough to hold them.
Yeah, that's good. Good reference to what it might point to, right? Other synonyms, I guess, I've heard used. Well, first of all, the Sanskrit is shunyata. So it's when we talk about emptiness, we're talking about emptiness of inherent existence. Things don't exist solely in and of themselves. They're usually relative or interdependent with things.
Well, here, I got it. So I'm in page 75. He goes, and he says, Buddhist commentators distinguish the 5 kinds of emptiness: the emptiness of pre-existence, the emptiness of post-existence, and the emptiness of non-existence, the emptiness of mutual exclusion, and the emptiness of self-existence. Avalokiteshvara is referring to this last form of emptiness, which is the emptiness of self-existence. I'm going to jump forward. He says that form is empty was one of the Buddha's earliest, most frequent pronouncements. But in the light of Prajnaparama, form is not simply empty. It is so completely empty. It is emptiness itself, which it turns out to be the same as form itself. That's a mindfuck.
Yeah, this seems to be a pretty expansive claim. Very certainly radical the first time you read through it, and then even the next 10 times you read through it.
I'm kind of confused here. So what is this trying to is this basically describing the
Well, I can continue a little bit here while guys.
Yes, that would
The logic of this, which has become the most famous statement in Mahayana Buddhism, goes like this: form, or any other entity of the mind, is defined by the mind and exists only because we claim it exists. The only thing that exists in this case is our definition of form. Form itself is empty of anything that could be called self-existence. Whatever we use to define form, it is dependent on something else. Thus, the essential nature of form is emptiness. But emptiness is simply another name for reality, not just a part of reality, for reality has no parts, but all of reality, though neither can reality be considered to be a whole. The essential nature of reality is that it is indivisible or empty of anything self-existent. But if form is equivalent to emptiness, or the indivisible fabric of reality, then emptiness must also be equivalent to form. Thus, Avalokiteshvara goes beyond the understanding of early Buddhists who understood that form is empty and surprises Sariputra with the statement, emptiness is form. Boom! In your face! So he turns his understanding of Abhidharma upside down and tells him that in light of the wisdom that is equivalent to any attempt to separate reality into parts, including parts such as form, themselves are empty, or there are attempts to account for all of reality as we experience it. I mean, this is why I love the Heart Sutra, though, because it's so mind-bending. No.
Also, I posted the it's basically the 8th step in the 10 rules. It's just basically describing that nothingness.
Oh, the 10, the ox.
Yeah.
So, are you saying that it's a state of mind?
Yeah, is it supposed to be a state of mind? Is that what it's describing?
Well, it says
Or-
it's empty of self. What did it say? It's empty of
Self-existence.
existence. So I do believe it's more so talking about states of mind, unless it's referencing physical things as more so mental projections. But I think it is looking at it from that perspective.
Right. And this is interesting because the next paragraph, he kind of is, or at least Red Pine's interpretation is that he's kind of dismantling dualism. This then is the hub around which this sutra turns, the equation that puts an end to the dualistic conception of reality. The problem that arises when we reflect on our experience is that we reflect on our experience. We think, therefore we are, and once we are in trouble. forever divided by what we use to define our existence. In analyzing the elements of this particular definition of self-existence, namely the five skandhas, Avalokitesvara sees that they are empty of anything permanent, pure, or inherent. They are empty of anything real. They are empty as a group. They are empty individually. They are so completely empty, we might be tempted to say that they do not exist, but we can't say that they do not exist because they exist as delusions. And we cannot say that they do not exist because they are completely empty. All right, what do you think? How do you guys square with that? We can't say that they do not exist because they exist as delusions, and we can't say that they do not exist because they are completely empty.
I find the term delusion interesting because I'm not sure if I'm fully getting it, but I would phrase that particular word as if you're looking at reality around you, it's not that everything that you see is a complete delusion. It's more of a controlled hallucination. It's somewhat reliable to the real world, but also not the actual real world itself. It's a metaphor for it. I don't know if that's what you're asking, but that's just a thought that appeared in my head.
I think another way to look at it that might help is things are another aspect probably is that this could look at as impermanence as well. So the delusion is like we think things are solid or existing just on their own. And so maybe another way to frame it is like things are always interpenetrating with causes and condition. Right, so we think one thing just stands by itself, but it's always being influenced either by our concepts or something else, and there's no clear line between this and that. I'm trying to not be as abstract, but like something as simple as like your own body, your own name, ecology, like pretty much everything. Even the idea of, you know, they talk about the emptiness of emptiness too. Even the concept, even emptiness, right? Like the reason why we're calling it emptiness is because someone has coined that name in history, but it could be anything else. The reason why we know about it is because someone told us about it. It doesn't stand just alone, independently.
So is that to say that emptiness could equally be replaced with anything, or?
Well, the actual word, right? The selection, the term that we're using to call it can be anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The reason why we're calling it emptiness is because we are all English speakers essentially here, and some translator has picked that one specifically. But yeah, I don't even like the actual term because people think it's like someone was saying here, just empty of physical substance and stuff. So I don't like that term. I probably prefer to speak to paint the picture around it, or to use the full description. You know, empty of inherent nature, voidness, or easiest way is just to use the actual Sanskrit. You avoid confusion of people thinking that it's just that nothing's there, like nothingness, I guess.
How do we distinguish emptiness from impermanence?
It really isn't that different. They're complementary concept. They're two sides of the same.
I mean, emptiness seems like a even more radical version of impermanence. When you're looking at an object, you're still thinking of it as an object. Like I'm looking at, let's say, my dresser right now. I'm like, you know, that's impermanent. That won't always be a dresser. But it's so impermanent that it's empty of the essence of dresser right now, and it's, even though it looks like an object that's just staying the exact same, it's constantly changing even when I don't notice it myself. So it just seems like a logical extension of impermanence to its like fullest end.
Yeah, like if you truly see impermanence or emptiness, you see the other one as well. It's just like It's just pointing at a different aspect of the same thing.
I want to read off what Puka-kun wanted to say because no one's hearing his questions. So he says maybe blankness. Maybe instead of using emptiness, you could say blankness. Or
I'd be curious what he or she means by blankness.
oh,
I'd like to say something.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think that what this text is basically trying to do is that it is trying to dissolve the arbitrary boundaries that we as humans create. So when we are basically saying that something is empty, then again we are basically using the opposite of empty to describe the empty. So basically empty could be said as absence of anything. When nothing is present, then it is empty. But again, the person that is describing empty does not exist as well. So there is no empty because there is no person who's perceiving the emptiness. Because the person himself is part of the process.
Everything in the chain is empty, right?
Everything is just the way it is, and when we use something such as empty, we are again drawing a boundary, such as not presence of anything. That is what gives the word empty meaning. If that makes sense. So it's basically, for example, I mean, like there is no person who's perceiving anything. It's just a whole process that is going on. And everything that we say, even the words that we use, even the words that we create. For example, if I say I, then what I'm basically saying is I'm separating myself from the universe. That is how I exist. Basically, there is I mean, everything, even the language in itself is inaccurate.
so is this? I'm just trying to be trying to be clear here. So is this to describe this current experience, like the way that I am talking to you right now?
Yeah.
Is it describing this? Okay.
Well, I think that the way the consciousness is, we constantly create arbitrary boundaries, and that is a method to not go insane. Because because everything that we say, for example, addition is basically opposite of subtraction, and multiplication is can be defined as opposite of division, and so on. So basically everything can be defined in terms of its opposite. And these are just arbitrary boundaries that we keep drawing to keep ourselves sane, and to give a meaning to our life, and to keep ourselves occupied, and to keep moving forward. But the thing is that everything is actually arbitrary, and there is no reason to get way too much emotionally attached to any of these arbitrary boundaries, because they are actually arbitrary in nature.
So to split ourselves from the rest of the universe, to split things in the universe, would be a judgment of sanity?
It's basically, it's a necessary evil. It is something that we do, and it gives us like it keeps us sane, basically. That is what I would say.
So unless there are some boundaries to separate us from the rest of the universe, like there wouldn't be a mind, or we couldn't create stable personality or consciousness.
I guess we already are conscious, and that's why we do it. For example, if you that's how our human brain works. For example, if you look at a night sky and you watch stars, your brain would just start finding patterns, and it would start creating connections between the stars and creating shapes and things like that. So that's how the human mind works.
Yeah, but then what is the human mind defined as? Like, who is the one that creates those boundaries? Can you be defined as an I? Like, if you create those boundaries, or if you just decline, not decline, like, if you don't create those boundaries, then what are you? Like, you can still use them, but you just don't.
I don't think that's the point of the Heart Sutra. I believe the point of the Heart Sutra is to leave a lot of baggage behind, right? It's kind of like you don't need any of this. You don't need the checker line. You don't need the starting point. You don't need the run. You don't need any of it. It's all the same emptiness, right? Like it's saying in a very mutual and very broad stroke sort of way that all of these things don't exist in and of themselves, and they don't deserve anything for them. It's like everything is an illusion, and it doesn't need more illusions to back it up.
Yeah, I would agree with Rafi on that. I mean, I think like now I'm on page 109, because in the text, right, in the Heart Sutra, it says there's no causal link from ignorance to old age and death. And then earlier it kind of breaks down the 5 skandhas, which is like, perception, memory, sensation, consciousness. It says all of those, there's no emptiness. In emptiness, there is no form, no sensation, no perception, no memory, blah, 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 right? And then it says no causal link and no end of causal link, right? And so when it goes into that, it's like, it says here in the text, having analyzed our experience in terms of skandhas, abodes, and elements, which is like all the old Buddhist like psychological terms, we now consider it as a sequence of causal connections. Of course, in the light of prajna, which is wisdom, right, these causal connections dissolve, as do the skandhas, the abodes, and the elements. Still, this sequence, known as the 12 links, remains one of the powerful teachings of the Buddhism worth studying in detail, blah, blah, blah. In Sanskrit, this line reads, no ignorance and no end of ignorance. And the next line reads, up to no old age and death, and no end of old age and death. That's a pretty wonky thing to say, right?
But it's the
because
same way.
It's not just saying that old age is empty. It's also saying that there's also no old age.
Well, it's taking
No
away every element. It's going back to it's doing the classic thing that alchemy does, where they go back to first matter, right? It's like the same thing the Tao Te Ching does, where it walks you back to a nameless name. It's just removing all possible elements to then redefine them as non-existent elements, right? And I think that this is like supposed to be one of the last sutras you're supposed to read, isn't it? Like this is one of the last sutras you're supposed to read before you need not more sutras, right?
Yeah, what the hell are you doing?
What do you mean? Like, I'm starting with the the last one.
I'm not saying you're starting with necessarily the very last one. I'm just saying there are some sutras that talk a lot more about like practice and stuff you're supposed to do and things like that. This one is sort of beyond practice, right? This is like when you're already through the gate, like once you've already sort of completed the journey, then you read this sutra to realize that the whole journey was pointless.
I mean, I think there's truth to that to a certain extent. I mean, Heart Sutra, I've seen like, any other temple, they just chant it, right? It's just like one of the things that they chant, in the mornings and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's put into daily practice essentially.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily the last thing that you can, but I think I like what Red Pine says in the very beginning of his introduction. If Guy, you want to go to the introduction, but he says the Heart Sutra is Buddhism in a nutshell. It covers more of the Buddhist teachings in a shorter span than any other scripture, and it does so without being superficial or commonplace. Although the author is unknown, he was clearly someone with a deep knowledge of the Dharma and an ability to summarize lifetimes of meditation in a few well-crafted lines. Having studied the Heart Sutra for the past year, I would describe it as a work of art as much as religion. And perhaps it is one more proof, if any more needed, that distinguishing these two callings is both artificial and unfortunate.
One of the latest
That's
things
nice.
One of the latest things I've heard about the like a theory of the construction of the Heart Sutra is that it was an actual summary from Chinese Buddhism, and then it was translated into Sanskrit actually. So it kind of goes beyond what we usually think. It's the other way around, or Sanskrit to the other language. But it's essentially like a summary of a lot of the Buddhist concepts, main ideas.
Is this sutra? So, Rafi, you say that the point of this sutra is to say that the whole journey was pointless. Is that because it was already the case that everything was this one unified thing?
Is Rafi still around?
I think that
I'm right here. What's
it
up?
could mean.
Oh, God damn it. Okay. So
I-
you said that the point of this sutra is to say that basically the whole journey was pointless. Is that to say that it's because we were already this unified thing?
Like, okay, I think a really good example is I did this meditation one time where I was in an airport, right? And I was really focused on getting there. And basically I started doing, because I was reading a lot of sutra, right? So I started doing this thing where I just started putting no in front of all of my important words. So like no enlightenment, no finish line, no process. And as I did this, it was very alleviating because I was throwing out baggage. I was throwing out attachment, right? And whenever you can like release yourself from that attachment, then you get to see the true emptiness of self that is really available. Because once you don't become attached to any of these things, you don't actually need a finish line, and you don't actually need to start. You've started, but at a certain point in the present, it becomes as if there is no connecting link from the past to the present if you go deep enough, and that doesn't need a beginning or an end.
I think that this could mean that there's this sentence "Tattvam Asi." It means you are it. So again, I would basically say that it's again a dissolution of every arbitrary boundary, and everything that you are seeking or that you are avoiding, you already are it.
But that realization, you are it, that's just additional baggage. The Heart Sutra is a sutra of like final sutras. It's the final sutra you need. And the last sutra you need is one where it removes everything. You take all your clothes off, all your spiritual tools, you lay them aside. Everything you think you've needed, you don't need. And you go off pure instinct. The body of the athlete knows the proper move to make in every situation. You need not know you're it when you are it, if you are it, which I don't even think that's even applicable because you don't even need to add any baggage to this at all.
So it's to say that it's not a matter of practice, but it's because the case of the situation through the journey that you don't need to do something or not do something in order for this experience to happen.
Okay, you know the koan basically where it says like anyone who thinks they ought to go to a psychologist needs to get their head examined. Anyone who thinks they need to go on the Zen path needs the Zen path. Anyone who thinks that they need the path of enlightenment needs to go on that. And the end result of that, when there really is no end at all and there was no beginning because it all happened in the same present moment, the final blow of that is you undress from like taking articles off of yourself and leaving them where they never existed in the first place. We've taken things from our imagination. We've taken figments of sounds that play in our heads like it and God and Brahman and self and all manifolds of the 10,000 things. And the 10,000 things doesn't just apply to objects, it applies to mental constructions. Even a single mental construction of thought is still an impedance. It's still an impeding force to the actual process of enlightenment. And the actual process of enlightenment requires the giving up of all of that and realizing that it was fundamentally empty. The hand in which held enlightenment was empty. Like Alan Watts even says this, like, you're tricked by Zen as much as it takes for you to realize that it's the old game where somebody says, I have a piece of candy, or I have a toy, or I have something in my hand, when the hand was empty the whole time. There really is nothing at the base of Zen. There really is nothing at the base of these sutras. All of these sutras, their highest, and like the Heart Sutra is a very wise sutra. I very much agree with it in totality, but it speaks to the highest nature of there is no highest nature because there is no lowest nature. If there's no lowest nature, how can there be an exact opposite highest nature? These things don't add up because it's not a duality. It's an emptiness. It's a not emptiness. It's unspeakable.
Well, Rafi,
So-
actually, there is a Sanskrit chant which is Nirvana Shatakam, which basically says what you are saying, that I am not. It affirms I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, I am not the body, and then it ultimately in the end says I am Sachidananda Rupa Shivaham Shivam. I'll actually post that video link in the No Mic. You could check that video out later on. Yeah. It very
But
much
even that isn't necessary. Even saying I'm not this is still additional baggage. The result of the Heart Sutra and the result of many sutra.
Let me read a little bit and then get back to you guys. This addresses directly the question of practice, right? Fatsang says the practice of prajna is of two kinds: shallow prajna, so prajna is wisdom, right? Whereby persons are seen to be empty, and deep prajna, whereby dharmas are seen to be empty. Here, to note the difference, it describes prajna as deep. Prajna is the substance and means wisdom, which is the spiritual awakening to the subtlest mysteries and the wondrous realization of the true source. Paramita is the function and means to reach the other shore, which is to use this marvelous wisdom to transform samsara until one reaches completely beyond it to the realm of true emptiness. So it's going to be a few of these, but I think they're pretty good. Chingmai says, when bodhisattvas practice prajna paramita, they do not think I am practicing the prajna paramita, or not practicing the prajna paramita, or not practicing the prajna paramita. If bodhisattvas can practice like this, they can benefit countless beings. But they do not think there's any benefit. And why not? Because bodhisattvas do not perceive anything inside dharmas or outside dharmas. Dharmas is phenomenon, right? Chi Shen says, to practice means to proceed according to the principle of suchness, thought after thought, without stopping for a moment. Huaishin says, this is the Mahayana practice of deep wisdom, not the Hinayana practice of superficial wisdom. It includes all practices that are not practiced and not clung to, that never stop helping other beings. It is like when a magician performs magic in order to make people aware of illusion. This is why it is called the deep practice of prajna paramita. Two more. Huiqing says, when a person is asleep, they might dream they're in a boat, that they're crossing a river and reaching the other shore. Then they suddenly wake up at home, and the river and the person in the boat are gone. When the bodhisattvas cultivate the way, they understand that both people and dharma phenomena are empty, and after approaching the end of the path and gaining the forbearance of birthlessness, they realize that the person who cultivates and the path they cultivate are nothing but a dream or illusion. Deva says, Prajna Paramita is the name of the Dharmakaya, the body that is neither born nor destroyed, that neither comes nor goes, that has dimensions of emptiness, that is changeless, that fills the entire universe and includes all things, and yet fits inside a mustard seed or a mote of dust, and for which metaphors fail. Oh, it's so fucked up.
It's fantastic.
But I love this. When a person is asleep, they might dream they're in a boat, that they're crossing a river and reaching their store. Then they suddenly wake up at home, and the river and the person in the boat are gone. That's a great metaphor that doesn't work, of course, that fails, right?
Because all metaphors fail, yeah.
All metaphors fail, but they suddenly wake up at home and the river and the person board are gone. When the Bodhisattva cultivate the way, they understand that both people and dharmas are empty, and after approaching the end of the path and getting the forbearance of birthlessness, whatever that may mean, they realize that the person who cultivates and the path they cultivate are nothing but a dream or...
Okay, I would like to make a point. I used to have this philosophy when I went back when I was reading a lot. I had this philosophy that there was 5 options for any situation, right? So there's yes, and there's no, and there's both yes and no, and there's neither yes, no, or not yes and not no. And then there's the 5th object, which is magic. Like the 5th one is what sutras point to. That option is option without option because it eliminates even the notion of yes and no. It eliminates the notion of not yes and no, and not yes, no, and not.
It's basically determinism or deterministic.
It's not deterministic at all. It's without a monkey brain, we would never have came up with the concepts that would allow us to come to all these things. It's basically like a step back. Like you realize everything that all of these quarrels that we seem to be presented with philosophically, these sutras point towards a very simple escape from them by pointing out their non-reality. And that is exactly what this is pointing to. It's saying that the path itself is non-real, and the metaphors we create about the path are not real. And when we finally complete the path, we wake up where we always were without the illusion of a journey anymore. And when there is no illusion of a spiritual journey anymore, you have crossed to the other shore because there was never the crossing. It's the classic story of passing through the gateless gate. Well, the gateless gate has no gate. You're already through it. That's the point of the whole koan. And it's very deep because it takes a lot to give that all up, because that is what you're working towards. That was always the point. You're always trying to give up attachments, and suddenly through some ego rigmarole, we're back to attachment, but suddenly they're philosophical attachments. So the higher wisdom then is to give up those philosophical attachments as well.
So, like, the point of the sutra isn't to guide you on the journey, it's to make the realization that there is no journey and that you're already at the goal.
I think that's pretty fire.
It is pretty fire. Yeah, like...
So, there's no point. So...
I'm not sure that he's saying it's pointless, right?
Yeah,
but he's definitely saying it's empty.
No. That's not what I meant. That's not what I was going to say.
Okay.
That's not what I was going to say. I was going to say, what's the point of practice? It's
the point
just
of
to release more baggage to make this a more acceptable idea.
It's not about releasing more baggage. It's about getting to the point where automatically you have no baggage. Automatically, there never was baggage. Imagine if you had such an epiphany that you realize there never was baggage and there never will be baggage. And any baggage that could be created, both mentally and physically, are all empty. They're empty. They're empty not in the sense that an eggshell is empty. They're empty in the sense of an eggshell without a shell is empty. They never were full. There was never anything to be full.
So, is it like in the same sense as it'll feel as though I've always been a master? Is it just basically more of a...
It's not about if you can let go of the concept that master and student and layperson have any difference at all, then that would be a closer way to think about what the concept is pointing towards.
If I might try to make a pretty crude comparison, like say you went to school and you had a huge project in 6th grade or whatever, and you spent all this time worrying about your grade and all this work that you had to put in your project, and then you do it and you continue on with your life, and you just think about that project that I brought up today and how little it mattered, and you wouldn't even thought about it again had I not brought it up. That's kind of what the journey is like, in that ultimately there's all this baggage that might not necessarily amount to anything in your life that you thought compared to the time that you had it, that you were experiencing it.
So it's a letting go of the past and a focus on the moment.
Well, not necessarily the past, but it's more like expanding one's perception or awareness so greatly that everything else kind of pales in comparison, but it also fulfills you in the same kind of sense.
So that it's just pure focus on the moment.
It's not anything, guy. It's ununderstandable because the understanding would be empty regardless. An empty understanding is not the highest Buddhist wisdom.
So it's one thing to say that all these things are empty. Is anybody able to describe why these things are empty?
Because they're... Oh, well, if Callie actually continued where it was talking about emptiness, it had made a very clear definition. What it says is that it's... Okay. Thus used by Avalokitesvara and by Mahayana Buddhists in general, the word emptiness does not mean nothingness. It is a double negative that means indivisibility.
Like, Lauren, I described emptiness that they're describing, like, not the emptiness of an eggshell, but the emptiness of an eggshell without a shell. It never had any substance to be filled.
So I think I would have maybe taken a different take on emptiness, but I can discuss that another time.
Well, if you take it from what the book is saying, it's not that... It's not like it... Are you basically saying that the eggshell and the egg, the contents of this shell, there is no difference between them? It's just one egg? Is that what you're saying, Rafi?
Well, I was making an incomplete metaphor to say that there never was any substance, that there never was even an empty eggshell to begin with. But, Lauren, this is completely non-dualistic, so I'm sure whatever you're going to come up with would actually probably not coincide with the book. Because, well, ultimate Buddhist emptiness really is completely non-dual because it eliminates the concept of the baggage of duality.
So basically, it's to be focused on the egg itself would be not what the point of this statement is.
No.
You might want to think of it as like
incorporating...
emergence between the subject and the object. And if you have neither subject or object, you have absolutely nothing. And consequently, you also have everything at the same time.
Not nothing.
It's colloquialism.
Well, I have something here too. I have two quotes that I can read from the book here. One, I would say, form and emptiness are the same, from the Buddhas above down to the smallest insect below. Every creature is basically empty. This form cannot be seen by the eyes, only true emptiness can see it. And this form cannot be heard by the ears, only true emptiness can hear it. The myriad things we know and feel all depend on our six senses, but form and emptiness are not separate. Then, this is great, on 79, Yinshun says, most people don't understand this. They think that emptiness means nothing, and that it can't produce everything that exists. They don't realize that if dharmas, which is phenomena, weren't empty, no dharmas would ever appear, and that what exists would always exist, and what doesn't exist would never exist. But dharmas aren't like that. Those that exist can change, then they don't exist. And those that don't exist can appear to exist as a result of causes and conditions. The birth and destruction, the existence and non-existence of dharmas, phenomena, is entirely dependent on their lack of self-existence and their fundamental emptiness. Thus, Nagarjuna said, because of emptiness, all things are possible.
Okay, so because you can use emptiness different ways of phenomena talking about it. What this is describing is that basically all phenomena that we can perceive are arising out of this emptiness. You could say a void, to use your imagination. You could almost say like it's arising out of this state of deep sleep, just to use an idea or concept. So all of this, the whole experience of reality, is arising out of this state that we best know it as like a deep sleep, and then returning to that place where what it's arising out of, into, and then returning to is all the same thing. So it's empty, it's form, and it's also, yeah, they're both the same.
Kind of like a wave moving across the water?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay, Callie, can I ask your impression? Because I know my opinion on this, but do you think the book itself throws away the concept of emptiness, or does it keep that as something that it considers as real as like impermanence?
What do you mean impermanence is real?
Well, I know impermanence is real, but I'm saying like, does the book, because the book, like the Heart Sutra suggests to throw a lot of things out, right? And it suggests, well, not necessarily throw them out, but to realize their like non-existence from the beginning. So at any point, does it say to throw out the concept of emptiness, or does it keep the concept of emptiness?
I mean, I think that might be answered by how we might interpret the mantra.
What mantra?
So there's a mantra in the very end that goes gate gate para gate parasangati bodhi svaha, right?
Yeah.
And so it says, remaining words of the mantra tell us more about gone or the understanding into which we are entering. Para means beyond. Paragate means into the gone beyond, into the understanding beyond. And parasangate means into the gone completely beyond, or into the understanding completely beyond. Thus, the word around which is this mantra and the entire sutra revolves is beyond. After negating the categories of the Abhidharma, this sutra refuses to set up another category or set of categories. Whatever it is, this teaching is beyond it, including itself. This is the function of this mantra, to go beyond language and the categories in which language imprints us, and to lead us into the womb of Prajna Paramita, which is gone beyond, the gone completely beyond. The mantra concludes with Bodhisvaha. While the first part of the mantra leads us into the womb, this last part gives us birth. Bodhi, which is case-free here, and thus the magic seed of our rebirth, means enlightenment, and Svaha is exclamatory, meaning amen or hallelujah. It was used at the end of Vedic rituals, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think that, to me, kind of sums it up. It's like gone, the gone beyond, gone completely beyond, which is to say that, to some degree, I think you're throwing away emptiness.
I would have to agree. I would consider it like they use emptiness in the womb. Like the terms that they set up in this book, like emptiness and with everything being completely empty, emptiness kind of exists as the lining of the womb for us to grow. And whenever we finally leave the womb behind, then we enter into birth, where we no longer need that shell to protect us anymore. So we have this eggshell that encompasses us with the concepts of this specific sutra. Yet with the leaving of this sutra, we leave behind all of the shell, and we leave behind all of the concepts that the sutra left us, and we leave with just nothing. Oh yeah.
I mean, not nothing, but yeah. But I mean, I think, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think it brings up emptiness and like cuts through everything, right? Emptiness is this concept or whatever that cuts through every possible thing, and especially I think Heart Sutra is in many ways responding to early Buddhism, right? It's like cutting through all these old concepts of like enlightenment, non-enlightenment, samsara, 5 skandhas, all these foundational concepts. It's cutting through all of that. And then ultimately it has to cut through itself, right?
Yeah, like that's the Diamond Sutra, right? That's like most of what the Diamond Sutra is about. Have you read that?
Yeah, I have. That's the next one. And actually, actually, we can just do Diamond Sutra next week. We don't have to do Heart Sutra again. I love the Diamond Sutra, and I can't wait because this is perfect because it kind of answers a lot of the conversations that we're having here.
It does, yeah, because the Diamond Sutra is all about cutting with the knife, right? Like this is about realizing your essence within, and the next one is about cutting yourself open. Like once you're born, then you cut apart yourself, and the Diamond Sutra is really about breaking yourself down, right? As I recall it.
Yeah, I think Diamond Sutra is even more, I would say, surgical than Heart Sutra. Heart Sutra just kind of like takes a broad, at least I don't know if would be other people would agree with me, but I feel like Heart Sutra is like a broadsword, like a big broadsword that takes a big swing, and Diamond Sutra is more like a fencing sword, and it's kind of like slowly cutting away and dismantling. I don't know if that's a good metaphor, but
I would take your metaphor. I would go a step further and say the Heart Sutra is like a broadsword, and the Diamond Sutra is like a scalpel. So you're dealing with your dead corpse. You're cutting your corpse apart because the body isn't real. The concepts that create you aren't real. All the concepts you held aren't real. It cuts apart everything that's left.
Yeah.
Because this sutra leaves
Yeah.
you with thinking you're at the final path, right? This sutra, no matter what state I think you read this sutra in, you end up leaving with that feeling of, I get it. Not even in a vocal sense, but you end up leaving like, I understand this, that everything that I could possibly attach to this is something that is just an attachment. And the Diamond Sutra, once you're born, comes in with a scalpel and it just dissects your body. I would describe it that way.
Yeah, I like the scalpel. Yeah,
I like
totally.
the mantra at the end of the Lotus Sutra because in a way, at least the way that I see it, is that it gives you this really profound sort of guidance, and it does leave you with this concept, but the mantra at the end is almost like saying, okay, throw that out too.
Like this sutra brings back to me what I think is really important about what Alan talked about at how like Zen schools would operate, because Zen schools would operate where the students were shunned upon for talking about Zen. They were basically like, if you are to speak of Zen, you are doing something wrong. Like any words of Zen, you need to wash your mouth out with soap because you're not getting the point of Zen and you're not understanding the point of Sutra if you believe you'll have any real attainment by talking about it. Like, it's the same thing with the metaphor of the koan about, like, why do you meditate? And the guy says, well, I'm meditating to become a Buddha. And he says, no, like, no matter how long you meditate, you'll never become a Buddha. And you can take that in two ways. You can take that to say meditation isn't the ultimate key to enlightenment, or you could take it to say you're already a Buddha. And the way that it's presented is to say you're already a Buddha. Any attempt to attain anything, you're hurting yourself because you entered into this journey with emotional baggage. You got rid of some of your emotional baggage enough that you want to become a Buddha now, but that's a distraction. And you need these very powerful sutras to come in after the fact, because it's as if you had cancer and your treatment to cancer left you with a smaller disease. And this very small disease will kill you. Eventually, it'll drive you insane. And now we need to come in with these very fine-toothed combs, these knives, and break apart the smaller tumor that isn't fatal, but it's banal, and it'll bother you and it'll hurt you. And all of these things need to be left behind. The finish line needs to be left behind because you never started. The starting point needs to end because there is no finish. Everything needs to be taken away because all of it was illusionatory to begin with.
So the Heart Sutra saying here? Is it basically saying, so is it basically affirming that these were all illusions and that it was already the case? Is it that
Okay, to
you
just
didn't need to release your illusions because it was already the case?
to simply use what sutra of this kind use, take every word you just said and realize that it is nothing more than the creation of a primitive mammal, and say that sentence again and do anything but laugh. Because the true response to understanding wisdom through caveman allegorics is impossible.
I'd say keep going until it drives you crazy. Just keep
Yeah,
going.
that's
Keep going
what
until it
works.
drives you crazy. Yep. And then you like Ralphie was saying, it kind of like gets to this point where like you do understand a large majority of it, but there's like this one piece, this like grain of salt of sand in your mind, and it just like irritates you, and it's small but it's there, and you can feel it, and it's just like this one like final thing, and you're just like, I don't understand. And then it's, for me, it was like it was ripped away from me. Like I wanted it so badly that it wasn't given up, it was taken from me, in a sense.
Like language? What do you mean?
No,
What
that
was
Guys,
taken from
why did you know this? It's the exact same itch. It's the exact same pain that you are always stuck with. It's thinking that I'm attached to my day life. I'm attached to my daily life. I'm attached to these people. I'm attached to these concepts. I think this and this about myself and this about everything else. And I can't deal with it. So I want to follow Zen, or I want to follow Sutra, or I want to follow the path or the way. I want to walk the Tao. And eventually you get good enough that you're no longer bothered by all of the reasons that you wanted to initially enter this, and the only thing left that's still bothering you is the training. You're walking a path that no longer needs to be walked. The training did its due, but now the real psychological, the toll, because it's a toxic entity. Practice is toxic. It hurts you. Like you don't need practice. That's why it's saying that you need nothing. It's all empty. But this empty practice, that then becomes what you need to let go. That becomes the thing that is now holding you back.
Okay.
Wait, before we continue, I would like to quote the last thing that Red Pine quotes in his translation, in his commentary. Lauren is going to love especially the first and middle part. I'm not sure if she's going to like the ending, but she'll probably enjoy the first and second part so much that she will ignore the ending.
Oh, God.
That's my prediction.
Wow.
So listen, because we've had many discussions, so we know our positions. Hui Ching says, strap yourself in, Lauren. A mantra so he's referring to the final mantra, right? A mantra like this points directly at the mind. Because it is neither moving nor still, you can't use, ding, 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 the mind to find the mind. Because the mind has no beginning or end, you can't use the mind to put an end to the mind. Because there's no inside, outside, or in between. If you look for the mind, there's no place to find it. If there's no place to find it, then you can't find it. Therefore, you should realize there is no mind at all. And because there's no mind at all, demon realms can't affect you. And because you can't be affected, you subdue all demons. The sutras say subduing demons is the place of enlightenment. Because you don't waver when you look at people who don't understand their own mind, you can use this to cure their illnesses. If you see dharmas outside the mind, demon realms will appear before you, and your mind will belong to demons. How can you save others then? The sutras say if you can't cure your own illness, how can you cure others? Even if you cure your karmic attachment to an illusory body, you still won't leave the demon realm. You will still fear birth and death and won't be able to escape the wheel of existence. Instead, you leave one life for another and take turns wronging each other. The Tathagata appeared in the world to save those who are completely lost and to help them awaken to their own mind. When you chant this mantra, don't give rise to deluded thoughts. This is how you should uphold it. Boom. Did you squeal, Lauren?
It was beautiful. I feel so justified.
She's going to go and find that and like copy it so she can have it for later. Right?
I'm not that dedicated.
I'm just playing. I'm just picking.
The only thing I'm going to say is that you see it everywhere, and the concept of the mind, the concept of the present moment, emptiness, the nature of the self, all of these things are the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it needs to be pointed out, but I don't think that it's actually talking about like demons as we understand them, right?
You lost me at the demons.
Problems. It's talking about problems.
Yeah.
Well, see, did my prediction not come completely true? I said she'd be so gleeful in the beginning, she'd ignore the ending completely. Did I not?
Yeah, you were right. I did ignore the ending.
Called it.
Ellie knows the
Therefore,
Lord.
you should realize there is no mind.
Bye.
So I want to bring something up which I think is important to talk about when we talk about the nature of emptiness. I think this is something that got overlooked a bit. It's not just the interconnectedness aspect of it, though I will say that's a part of it.
It's also the duality of it.
No. Sorry. You need to be paying more attention if you're going to try to predict what I'm about to say.
Come on, Rafi.
You can't
Dude.
predict what she's going to say, Ralphie.
God. So the thing about the nature of the mind is that it contains this movement of thought, but anytime you're thinking about something, you're separating yourself from the thing that you're thinking about. So even if you're thinking about something that's happening right in front of you, your thoughts are a little bit behind what's happening because it takes time to think about what's happening in front of you. So there's always going to be a kind of delay there. And that's why all of these concepts, everything that we can possibly think of, either has that kind of delay or separation or a difference in reflection from actual reality. And that's why the present moment is so important, because you can't experience reality directly unless you do it without that thought. And that's why the emptiness is so important. It's not saying that the nature of reality is empty. It's saying that everything you think about it is just these forms in your head that aren't corresponding to actual reality at all. So, I don't know. I just thought that the mind needed to be mentioned.
I think I like that. And can I add another quote into the mix? There's so many in here. Maybe we should have spent more time on it, but I'm happy to move on from Heart Sutra eventually. Ching Chui says, once you catch a fish, you can forget the trap. Once you catch a rabbit, you can forget the snare. Once you catch the meaning, you can forget the words.
I love it.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And then that's sort of pointing out the difference between like a conceptual understanding and sort of like a experiential understanding.
Mm-hmm.
What if I wanted to catch 2 rabbits?
Well, you better get a big net.
I would say you're very hungry.
The net and the rabbits and you are all emptied.
All these conceptions about them are empty. It's such an important difference to me. There is still a reality there. That's why it's not really nothingness. It's not really emptiness. It's just that everything you've ever thought about a rabbit, whatever comes into your head when I say the word, all of that is empty.
Right.
It's empty in the sense that it's not separate.
It's just like Ralphie said, or I think it was Ralphie. The wave and the ocean. Like, you're not saying that the wave does not exist, right? Because it's there. You see it. There's a difference, right? There really is a wave, but it's sort of like the understanding that the wave and the ocean are actually, they're not separate. It's a movement.
That was me, not him.
Oh, I'm sorry, Guy. I said I didn't know. So
It's okay.
it's Guy.
I think I have
Guy
said that.
mentioned
I've
it.
definitely said that.
I thought that was stupid, but now someone else was taking credit for it.
I would say it's not separation. Thinking about it in terms of separation is just another concept. You know, obviously time and space do still exist. It's just that all these thoughts and concepts are just illusions.
I think it's not just that the concepts are
disagree.
empty. I don't think the concept. I think concepts, yes, are empty, but I also think the things themselves are also empty.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Because of indivisibility.
no, like on the most can't think of that fundamental level, like literally what you're experiencing right now is coming out of nothing and then returning to nothing, beyond nothing. Like
Well,
nothing is still something, right? It's less than that. You can't even imagine it. You can't, it doesn't, the mind cannot grasp this. We can just explain it in this way.
You can only know that it's happening, but not know what is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
I can
Yeah,
kind of
we're gonna have so much fun with the Diamond Sutra.
I'm
See,
excited.
What you're talking about, Mike, is it basically pure blindness? You nothing perceived?
Yeah, like
in the sense
yeah.
of blindness.
Okay, so no, that's still like okay, it is non-awareness. Nothing.
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah.
awareness
Okay.
isn't even there. Like,
So you're unaware? Or is this like the you're not aware, you're not aware kind of deal? Where there's
Yes.
no way
Yeah.
to judge.
And so
Yes.
the reason it's the latter is because these are all still just concepts. The
Yeah.
concept of awareness is not the same as actual awareness.
yes. And it, like you just said, Guy, beyond even like that.
And what happens when you experience reality is that you experience it primarily, and then your mind starts thinking about it secondarily and trying to understand it and trying to put labels on it and separate these things. And that's just what your mind naturally does, which is fine. But all of your perceptions and thoughts about reality are secondary to what's actually going on. And so what you are experiencing is pretty much mostly an illusion, because you're experiencing the world through thought all of the time. And you don't even really realize how much you think about things and how much thoughts make up your reality and how different that is from actual reality.
Well,
Okay, guys, I'm gonna go. Callie, don't let these guys steal your class from you too much, okay?
Oh no, this was great. I mean, I'm so happy that everybody was chipping in. I mean, I didn't prep as much as I would have liked, but it was perfect.
Before you go, I just have to give you some props. You were on fire tonight.
Agreed.
Right on
Thank
on
you,
point.
man.
Right
Well
on.
done, Rafi.
All right, have a good class, guys. I'm excited. I want to listen to the
But
rest
all
of
of
the
that,
recording.
all of the feelings that you have are empty.
Yeah. Just remember
yeah,
that.
Just know that it means nothing.
Means
Well, no,
absolutely
no,
If it
nothing.
means absolutely nothing, then I love you guys too.
life is pointless. There is no God. Bye-bye now.
Oh my god.
Bye.
but